Thank you so much. What a fantastic 2 days that we have had. And Governor Lee's address that he gave without a note really was not only inspirational, but I think it captured so much of our discussions and really segue into this very important leadership discussion on the future. We've learned, and I'll hopefully make a few comments on this, maybe in the closing, but right now we want to turn to this enabling environment that's created the Tennessee Miracle, the Tennessee Innovation Platform, the Tennessee that we're in today. What's going to be the recipe for success in the next 25 years, if we could even predict that far? So we're going to really look at some of these assets, which is why the Council on Competitiveness chose Tennessee for the first competitiveness conversation. And I have to say, it was a very prescient decision that we did, because boy, have we really learned what it takes to create an innovation hub for the future. So I want to start off with our great leadership panel with you, President Boyd. You've had an incredible career as a business leader in Knoxville. You have a global company. You're involved in telecommunications, and now you're leading a great public university system. So building on the successes of today, what do you think are some of the major challenges facing higher education? Yes, in Tennessee, but even a little broader than that, as we ensure that we're not just educating, but creating the lifelong learning potential for the people that create our future.
Let me give a two-part answer. The first part is around my former job, the one that you left out. I've changed jobs a lot. It's been hard to keep a job recently. But I was, for a short period of time, the Commissioner of Economic and Community Development. And that'll lead into why it's important to invest in higher education. So when I was Commissioner of Economic and Community Development, I remember my first week on the job, I was thinking, this is a really long title. It's a lot to say. That's why we abbreviated ECD, because it's just long. So why can't we just call it Commissioner of Jobs? Because that's what we're about. We're here to recruit jobs to the state of Tennessee. And what's this whole community thing about? But it turns out that is the most important thing. I'm hopeful my successor won't disagree, at least not here publicly. But electricity, our friends at TVA, are incredibly important. Having affordable power, having the right economic incentives. But at the end of the day, when you're competing for businesses, most of those things kind of become evened out. What they're really looking for is the talent, the talent pool to be able to fill the jobs that they need. And here's the thing that I also found, that there's no place on the planet where there's a large pool of really talented unemployed people. So if you're looking to move your business someplace, yes, we want talent, but you're not going to go someplace where there's a lot of people that are unemployed ready to come work for you. The trick is being able to recruit them to your state, to the place that you decide to locate. So that's why the community is so important. Investing in a strong community is critical to bringing businesses to our state. Higher education back to your question, higher education is a critical part of that community. People want to go where a community has a highly educated workforce, and higher education plays a key role, not just in producing certificates and associate degrees and bachelor's and of those things, but we also produce the teachers that help support the public school system, the K through 12. So higher education is a critical part of this overall component to prosperity and growth of the state.
Let me just follow up with that and ask you about the challenges you're facing with the number of potential students you have and the growth trajectory. Because I know, for instance, and we'll ask Chancellor Plowman about this, you have huge numbers of applications now coming in from Tennesseans and from people all over the world that want to come here. How do you see that? Do you see over time the expansion of the system in terms of places, the virtual education? I mean, that's a big challenge, but it's a great opportunity too.
So for those who will be suspicious after I answer this question, I didn't pay her to ask this question.
No,
maybe Dondi set her up, but so thank you for the question. So first off, our state, for it to continue to grow, is going to need more talent. And the best source of talent is our higher education institutions across our state. It's great if we're a baseball team, it's great to go to the free agency and bring people in, but you also want to have a good farm club. You want to have great talent production within your state. And it's up to our universities to be able to do that. One of our actually I want to maybe take a quick digression and just say, so critically important for us to invest in our TCATs and our technical schools. Everything that the governor said is true, and they've been overlooked for decades. And so the investments that have been made over the last 5-10 years to support the technical trades is critically important. However, I think maybe the pendulum has swung a little bit too much. Sometimes I hear people, not sometimes, oftentimes say, you know, you really don't need to go to college anymore. College is overrated. There's really no jobs for people with a bachelor's degree. All the jobs are from those skills that you're learning at the TCATs. Here's a quick stat for those that are from Tennessee. Over the last 10 years, we have 90,000 fewer jobs that only require a high school diploma. So only getting a high school diploma wasn't a good future for you in the past. It's not today, and it's going to get worse. And to the point about needing more technical skills, over the last 10 years, we've created 49,000 additional jobs that require technical skills. So we desperately need those technical skills. But over the last 10 years, the state of Tennessee has created 361,000 new jobs that require a 4-year degree. We've had a shortage of 10,000 engineers, 2,000 nurses, 2,000 teachers. So we desperately need to produce the talent that our 4-year schools produce. At the University of Tennessee, we're trying to do our part. Last 5 years, we've increased enrollment from 54,000 to 59,000 across our system, so a 15% increase. We struggle with residence halls and some of the auxiliaries, but we can do that on our own. We can invest in, through public-private partnerships and on our own authority, on our own funding, we can invest in those type of support buildings that we have. At the University of Tennessee, we're at 59,000. By the year 2030, we're going to go to 71,000. To do that, we're going to also need to build a lot more academic buildings. So that's one of our challenges. We've got to, as a state, find a way to be able to continue to invest in higher education, continue to invest in capital outlay. We've had some good years in the past, but I think maybe Stuart and the governor would definitely agree. Things look tight for the next 3 years at least, and maybe a bit into the future. So we've got to come up with some new funding strategies to be able to find a way to be able to continue to support the capital needs for the universities, to build the talent the state needs to continue to recruit businesses.
Thank you. Well, Stuart, let me turn to you on this in your role as Commissioner of Economic Development and Business and all the things you do. This issue of funding, I mean, Tennessee has been a great recipient of resources coming in from the Inflation Reduction Act, the tremendous investment from global enterprises. We had an incredible panel yesterday of the industry leaders here. What do you see as some of the capital resource issues going forward? You're a great state without an income tax, but you do have sales tax. How are you going to generate the financial resources for this investment to keep the Tennessee innovation journey going forward?
Well, let's see. I was fortunate to serve as the Commissioner of Finance for the governor for a couple of years, and thankfully I did, so I could answer this question a little bit. First of all, I'm glad that Deborah and the Council of Competitiveness is here in Nashville. Thank you for doing this in Tennessee, and I have the great pleasure to work for a governor that really gets what we do, and it's an honor and a pleasure to just be in this position to do this work and work for a great person who understands commerce and business and all the things he talked about. So, you know, we are, thankfully, you know, the state is in a good financial position. We've had just decades of great leadership. You know, that's another thing that doesn't get mentioned often is we hear it from other businesses and other consultants that work for companies across the globe, and they'll tell you that, you know, Tennessee's in a unique position because we're well aligned. We have, you know, again, go back decades of leadership in the governor's office, in our legislature, in the civic philanthropy. It's something that's very unique in our state. It really is. I say that, and other states may raise their hand and say, well, we do that too. Well, we do it better than pretty much anybody, and we're very fortunate in that regard. We are a state that has had good fiscal, conservative fiscal management of funds. There's been, you know, in the past, there's been talk about an income tax and all those things. Those get set aside. It's a competitive position of ours as a state as we compete for businesses and jobs. Sales tax, it's heavy sales tax. And so, you know, we think about what's going on across the state. and tourism, for instance, and people that are moving here, they like that as an aspect to what attracts businesses to our state. That's a heavy income stream for our state. Now, the governor did talk about our roads, and we have a gas tax. You know, we're looking at, you know, how do we consider that over the long term, as if, you know, electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles become more and more commonplace as people think about rideshare and fewer cars on the road, fewer pumps at the station. So we have a governor that's very conservative. We have a legislature that's very conservative. We've saved for rainy days, and it allows us, you know, to be very competitive as a state. And we're not borrowing money to run the state. That's something. That's something that we've talked about, you know, and wise investing, I think, is important, but we're well positioned financially to do the things that we think we need to do in the future, and to really echo what the governor said, making investments that in 20 or 30 years really matter. We need to be thinking about that now. If we've got a $30 billion road need out there, then we need to be thinking about what are we going to do about it. I know, you know, something that's near and dear to Randy is capital investment on campuses. How do you think about that long term? Those are all things that need to be discussed. I think we are going to probably get to a place we got to think differently about it. But, you know, as of right now, we're in a really good position to kind of keep doing what we're doing.
Yes, and having a state surplus is, I think, not only fairly unique, but it's something that if we turn to the federal government, we're in such a situation now with the deficit. And you know, one of the little factoids that pretty soon the interest on our debt will exceed our entire expenditure on defense, which is a very serious issue.
Deborah, since Stuart kind of gave me a softball there, I'd like to build on something he said. I warned him before we walked up. As I was sitting in my seat, I had an inspiration that's unprepared, but something I thought I might want to share with this group, because we've got a lot of very influential people in the room, a lot of business people in the room. So I wanted to share a thought with you. And in the state of Tennessee, I believe we've outlawed burning at the stake for heresy. So I'm hopeful that's true, because what I'm about to share with you is heresy in the state of Tennessee. And if I were at the General Assembly, I might still get burned at the stake. So what I'm about to share with you is a really radical thought for our state, but not a radical thought if you're a business person. So here's our challenge. So we're having flat revenues for the foreseeable future, not a lot of money for investments in big infrastructure projects like capital projects for higher education. The University of Tennessee, over the next 10 years, we need $3.5 billion worth of new infrastructure to keep up with maintain the things we have, plus to keep up with the growth we have. And I would imagine if we surveyed my friends in the other universities across the state, it would probably be at least that much again. So maybe $7 billion for higher education. The governor just said we have $30 billion worth of needs in roads. We've been really proud as a state. I remember when I was commissioner of ECD, it was part of my pitch. You know, we have some of the best roads in the country, top 5 roads in the country, and only one of 3 states with 0 debt on our road. And I was here in Nashville a few weeks ago, in which I was at 3 different events where some leader said, and we have the lowest debt per capita in the country. And you know, on the one hand, you know, I'm kind of proud of that. Well, that sounds really good. But at the same time, if you can't invest in the things that you need to help your state continue to grow, is that really the best approach? And I'm thinking then as a business guy, you know, if I'm a public company or a private company, and if I went around telling the rest of the market, the investors, we're the most under-leveraged company in our industry. Most private equity guys would say, there's an opportunity. I'm going to buy these guys. We're going to leverage them up and make a ton of money. So here's the heresy. Maybe we don't have to be the lowest debt per capita in the state. Is that really a competitive advantage compared to better roads and better higher education? Did some math. So we're actually, I said number 1. We're number 2. Florida's beat us like, don't quote me on these, was this kind of close. Florida was like $960 per person. We are $974 per person. So it was really close. So we could maybe beat Florida out if we wanted to be number 1. Let's just say if we wanted to stay number 2. Our state could borrow another, I asked the question, what if we wanted to stay number 2, how much additional debt could we take on? And by the way, we have a AAA bond in all the 3 agencies. So, I mean, we can borrow at an incredibly good rate. if we wanted to just stay number 2, we could borrow another $1 billion and still be number 2. And you can do a lot with $1 billion. I saw our friends, Bill Hargrave from University of Memphis and some of our other folks in higher education. We could do a lot for $1 billion just in higher education, maybe not too much in the roads. If we wanted to stay, we want to say maybe be middle of the pack. We want to be a Goldilocks state. We could borrow $16 billion and be 25th in the country. I don't advocate being Massachusetts or Illinois where you're $11,000 per person. But I think it's just a question that we should ask ourselves, because this isn't a rule, this is just a financial philosophy. And so as we're thinking about our strategy, there may be some other better ideas out there. This is just at least one that I would like to have put out on the table as we think about how we're going to invest in the infrastructure our state needs to continue to grow.
Thank you, Randy, because you raised the word radical, which has been a word that has infused our conversation over the last 2 days. And we have to give Chancellor Dearmeyer credit for that. In your opening remarks, you talked about radical innovation. So radical innovation are about how we invest, how we do our infrastructure, how we're educating our talent, how we're building the economy is all part of that continuum. So I want to turn to you, Daniel, because on this concept of radical collaboration, it involves risks, it has great rewards, but it needs to be resilient too. So share with us a little bit how you envision this culture of collaboration that we've discovered here in Tennessee. I think it's pretty unique in the country, and it's a big competitive advantage.
Yeah, I think we certainly believe so. I think you've heard it now on a variety of different panels, is that we have a culture where we can work together. I made a little bit of a, tongue-in-cheek remark, is that we're fierce rivals, on the football field, on the baseball diamond, but we can...
Maybe baseball, not really football.
See, this is what I have to deal with, okay? So...
You give Randy a mic, and it's really dangerous.
It's really dangerous. It's really dangerous.
Right, Stuart?
It's dangerous. I'm just gonna point out the buzzer beater in basketball 2 years ago. So we'll just leave it as that. And
So it happened once.
But it made it even sweeter. So we have been able to really, I think, make this a point of distinction. And the way it happens is it doesn't happen automatically. I think it needs to be fostered, it needs to be sustained, and then you kind of create at some point a flywheel effect where people want to be part of that. But really, I think it took a bunch of people to just say, we're gonna do this. We're gonna work together. We have all these assets in the state, and let's make sure that we're not getting stuck in these kind of small rivalries and so forth. This is not a zero-sum game. And we're not competing fundamentally with each other. We're competing with the coast. We're competing with the other areas where innovation and growth can happen. And let's really focus on that. And it's wonderful to see this at work, and it's wonderful to see how this already has spurred collaborations that we can see in a whole variety of different areas. So I think that's great. I think you heard it yesterday. I think on the very first panel. I think Jeremy talked about culture and people and momentum that is generated by that. This is phenomenal. I think what you're hearing here, in one dimension is really the fundamental question that we have to ask ourselves, is that the fundamentals of the state are very strong, right? You're talking about a fiscal strength that is enviable. You're having great research assets. We're one of the few states that have 3 R1 research universities, especially for a state of our size. We're having a phenomenal national lab. We have great companies here. We have global companies that are relocating here. All of that is fantastic. And then the question we have to all ask ourselves is do we need to do more? Right? That's the question. You've heard it I think both on the infrastructure side, and by infrastructure, we've heard everything from sewers to roads to energy infrastructure, that this is a really important question. I think that's one. And then I think there's another question which we haven't touched upon yet on this panel, but we've touched upon throughout the conference, of course, is how do we really get ready for an innovation economy? And because that is where where a lot of the wealth is generated. One way to think about this is that we're a great destination, and that is working. I mean, nobody should discount that. Is that the fact that you have, if you want to call it an announcement or a slip of tongue, whatever, about Oracle, that is a big deal because they could be anywhere. And the fact that they want to be here and are thinking about relocating, I think is a big testament. We heard it yesterday with when we talked about the R&D activities at Volkswagen and so on. That's all great. But there is a question, I think, what do we need to do? We've seen this happening in other states that are very intentional about attracting both talent, and I also want to say companies that are not at that level, but that are at a smaller level. So what about the startup that has maybe 10 or 50 employees that maybe was founded in Boston or in California and is now thinking about where they want to have their long-term future? Do we want to think about being a home for them as well? We want to grow them. We want to be an environment where people generate businesses and create businesses. We want to have the large businesses. We want to have high-growth businesses. But what about that segment? And they're not interested in tax incentives. Now, that's not so relevant to them. They're interested in having access to to talent, and I think to research capabilities that come from the great universities. So how are we thinking about that? You're having this innovation park next door. That's one way to think about it. We're thinking about similar things. I think thinking about these various different segments, is that an all segment strategy? Do you want to focus on certain segments, maybe energy here, maybe healthcare there? I think this is a discussion we have to have more intentionally, because I think that the combination of being a great destination for talent, but also getting ready for the innovation economy, is that intersection is where I think a lot of the future of the state will decide it upon.
And Dondi, you have a very sophisticated strategy at UT Knoxville on your commercialization of the emerging new knowledge and technologies that are coming out of, yes, research, but also collaboration. And the state has done very well on venture capital, compared to national metrics, but still not punching at its weight. What are your thoughts on how to marry this capital throughout the country that will come in and invest in these startups to scale them? We heard this morning about the Wire research out in California, a very small company that could have a huge impact on transmission. So share a little bit about your vision for the future on the commercialization at scale of the innovations in this state.
Well, let me start by saying thank you, Deborah, for that question. But one of the things I talk about on our campus, and I kind of think it's true for the state. By the way, it's really great when your boss is on the stage with you and he commits the heresy. So I feel I have cover here. Okay. So I always say to our leadership at UT Knoxville, we have to become the university that we're becoming, if that makes any sense. We have to take on, it's changed who we are. Everybody in the country wants to come here. We can't accept everybody. We've got faculty doing research at a level that we never experienced before. So we have to start being that university. Like our identity changes. And in some ways, I think it's true for the state as well. We're the place everybody wants to come to in the whole country. And so we have to, when it comes to the things you were talking about, Deborah, one of the things I've done on our campus is I set up, for example, an innovation fund. We made our first awards of $50,000 per faculty member to help them get that discovery out of the lab and into the marketplace or into people's hands. At the system level, something similar has happened. We have to just find ways. When the leadership elevates the importance of those things, then guess what? Activity follows. So that's some of it. And I think I agree with Daniel saying, and I think this could be the beginning of the conversation around how do we get strategic about where we can leverage our strengths. Jeremy, you said something yesterday that I've kept thinking about at Nissan. You, on the panel with all your colleagues, you were saying innovation in the product is one thing, but innovation in the process is so important. And I started thinking about that for the university and for the state. And to Randy's point, changing the way we think about debt maybe is I would call it maybe possibly an innovation, a difference in the process. In the university, one of our biggest obstacles, Deborah, is being a huge place. We can do things at scale, but on the other hand, processes need attention. And so that's been a takeaway for me, Jeremy. So those are some of the things that I think about.
I just want to underline that. And I think this is a not to be underestimated aspect of this, is that we have to get used. We have to get used to the fact that we are to the level of success that we're experiencing, and live up to that. And I have to say, I mean, we had the same challenge at Vanderbilt. Is that there was a kind of odd sense of like catching up with our own reality. And we have like our biggest market now is New York, okay, in terms of students that want to come to Vanderbilt. We have like a 6% acceptance rate. The whole thing is like insane. We've never had anything like that, even remotely in our history. But people, in this case, students that can be anywhere, go anywhere in the country, that want to come to this university. And we see it, across the board. But you now have to take that in, and you have to get a sense of like, well, this is not just some kind of fleeting thing, and oh my God, what's going to happen tomorrow? But this is a reality that we have now. And so I think a sense of a little more confidence, a little more swagger is good. That's useful. And what that means now to be more intentional about that, I think, and more strategic about that, I think this is exactly the type of conversation that we need to have statewide at this point.
So, Stuart, yes,
I
please.
just, one thing I would add to all of this, this not being complacent, I think is what we're all saying and would agree. We all can talk about the great things going on, but just as soon as we turn around, somebody's going to be on our heels. One of the things that we've been focused on in our department to try to bring some of this together is that we've had, we're a manufacturing-rich state across, a dozen clusters, industry clusters across the state, decades of, success there globally. The governor mentioned our foreign direct investment. We've had just a lot of success there. The opportunity we have as a state right now is to continue to work with those companies that are investing millions and billions of dollars in our state to make things. We have an opportunity to make sure that we can be that conduit to the research institutions in our state or other researchers in our state. We as a state are getting smoked by other competitors, states. If you compare what is being spent, what industry, corporate research and development dollars are being spent in our state versus, probably 7 or 8 states across what I would consider our competitive peer group. I don't know if we're last, but we're close to being right at the bottom as a comparison.
29th.
Well, 29th, but I'm looking at a 10-state peer group that we don't compete with. We compete mostly with our border states, including Texas a little bit, sometimes Ohio. We spent in 2020 $1.8 billion. Companies, corporate spend, R&D spend in 2020 was $1.8 billion compared to Georgia, which is probably one of our most competitive states, $5 billion. North Carolina spent $13 billion, just to give you some relevance to what's going on. So one of the things that we're doing with an initiative called T&Go, and this is around mobility, which is very broad. Mobility covers a lot of things, but this is our opportunity to try to figure out, with partners, how do we try to close that gap and become at least middle of those 9 or 10 states? How do we move the needle and become a little bit more competitive from that perspective? It's a great tool for us. And, I have the privilege to talk to CEOs of major corporations all around the world with site selection consultants that work with every single brand that you can name. And for me to have that opportunity to introduce that concept or that idea, it really gets a lot of attention. we've actually, within the last 12 months, just that conversation has opened up doors for R&D opportunities at a local level, and we're really excited about it. You all know, I mean, all of you in this room understand what I'm saying. I think we've just missed out on that, making that connection, and having the ability to sort of have the discussion and collaborate in a way to introduce those R&D opportunities, to find out, one, what's here in our state that we can introduce to those companies, and then if what's lacks or what's not here, what can we do, what my department can do, what the governor can do to help bring resources to the table so that it is something that a company say, okay, now you have what I have, and I want to partner with that institution to do my research and development, and not do it on the West Coast or the Northeast or somewhere else in the world.
It's fantastic, Randy.
You okay if I build on that? I know you're looking at your questions, but I'd like to
No,
build.
but you anticipated what I was just going to
great.
ask you, so you're ahead of the curve there. But Randy,
No, to say that, you gave me the introduction as an entrepreneur and a business person. So before became in public service, I had a business. We had 4,000 products, about 120 engineers, pales in comparison to some of the people I know that are in this room. But one of the things I learned through that process was how important it was to have your engineering and design people next to the factory. Because I didn't. I had a team of engineers in Knoxville, Tennessee, and back in the day, 1993, when we first started manufacturing, we manufactured most of our things in China, and it was constantly a fight between the factory floor and the designers. Why can't the factory bake it the way we designed it? And the factory say, why can't they design it so you can manufacture it? So it makes sense to have your designers next to where your factories are. We're in a great position in that we've got so much industry already in our state, but unfortunately, most of the design and manufacture or design engineering is someplace else. But I think it's the next big opportunity for our state to start bringing that design and engineering to our state. And the one thing when we talk to our partners in the state and ask them, why won't you do it? One of the big reasons is they don't feel that we have the talent back to us. And that's where we need to be aligned with our industry partners and making sure that we're providing the talent that they need to be able to bring more R&D jobs here to the state of Tennessee. And I think that's the next big wave. We've got a lot of partners already. They've already got a lot of R&D, and somewhere in the world we need to bring it to here, and we need to make sure that we give them the incentives and the talent to do so.
Can I just add, I want to go back to one thing Stuart said. One of the ways our world is changing in terms of research funding that we get from national agencies. So let's take like National Science Foundation. They used to give out, I'm simplifying it, but one grant, one faculty member, one researcher, one thing. Now it's big programs that involve teams of people across universities. And one of the things they insist on seeing now is, how are you aligned with the state? What is the state bringing to the table? Any resources? Is industry bringing to the table any resources? And those are the projects that get funded. And so one of the things, that's just a change in the way we're doing business now. So it kind of speaks back to this thing, Daniel, about us needing to be aligned. So, and looking at other institutions, they want to know, what are you doing for workforce development in this big grant about, mobility research, for example. So those are ways in which I think we've got to catch up as a state and as the research institutions with the new reality so that we can be bringing to the table what you need us to bring.
Yeah, I think this is such an important point. And I mean, we're spending $1.2 billion on research every year, Vanderbilt. So that's like 60-70% of all the corporate R&D spending in one university. And you add the other universities to that, we're outspending basically what's happening in the private sector. When you look at the power of partnerships, intentional partnerships on that, if you look at the history of Silicon Valley, of course, what happened, that happened in the 50s, in the 60s, the collaboration between Stanford and the private sector is incredible. I mean, you look at Kendall Square, the partnership with Harvard and MIT and the private sector is incredible. And, you think about Carnegie Mellon and Pittsburgh, but you got to be intentional about that. You got to be intentional about that and create structures where this is easier, where friction is removed, where we understand what everybody is doing. This is a whole nother challenge. So often innovation, I have a solution to your problem, but I don't even know about it. So to me, that's the next step. And to be intentional about that and to have a sense that this can be done here, I think is hugely important. And what I'm so encouraged to see at this conference is that as we see so many great people and different sectors of the state that want to come together and create this.
You know, one of the themes that also emerged in terms of technological innovation, where the state is so rich, is in advanced materials and how they cut across everything. And of course, Oak Ridge is one of the great leaders in the entire world on this. Having Oak Ridge National Lab embedded in this system is extremely powerful. You know, we heard about their fastest computer in the world and its applications. But back to your energy heritage here, you marry those two things. Comment on that, because that is really one of the frontiers. I mean, everybody in the world, as we've heard, needs energy to do anything, and a lot of it's ground zero in Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, and the governor referenced his priority on nuclear energy, and just sort of, you know, behind the curtain really is just energy resiliency in general, understanding the assets we have with here, TVA, ORNL, UT, Vanderbilt, Memphis, all across the state. You know, I'll just say that from the work that we do in talking to businesses, if the demand for power continues to increase, advanced manufacturing, the cost of material, all the things that's required to power these facilities is now becoming almost the number one hurdle that we have to, as we're recruiting, we have to have that conversation with TVA to say, is this a project that we can work with, because the power need is enormous. So understanding that, you know, this is a big deal, and if we're going to be competitive as a state in a place that people want to live, you know, that is really critical that we address that and that we work all together. The nuclear fund that we have, it was $50 million this year. The legislature was kind enough to give us $10 million. It's a start, but man, that's not going to really move the needle a whole lot. Except what it is doing is that we are having conversations. We manage that fund, and we are having conversations with global companies, companies that can do this anywhere in the world, and they're talking about doing it right here in Tennessee. That's a good start, and it's going to allow us to have these conversations around, you know, the resiliency, innovation. The other really cool thing about this whole conversation that I love, because my background is around entrepreneurship and venture capital, is all the innovators that come along aside with it. The entrepreneurs, you know, it's really important to have these large anchors. And what happens, I saw it with HCA here in Nashville. HCA started, you know, 50 years ago, right here. And if any of you are familiar with that family tree, there's so many people and technologies that spun out from HCA, and that none of that, Nashville wouldn't be what it is from a healthcare perspective without that. This Oracle Cerner thing that's about to happen is going to be that times, I don't even know. It's gonna change the landscape in Nashville for healthcare in particularly from a technology, particularly from AI. I know y'all have talked about quantum computing and all those things. I mean, now you're getting in a whole other area of innovation that's going to change, and we have that opportunity right here. And I mentioned Nashville, but literally across the state, to do that and win and lead for decades to come.
And it's a huge opportunity for the future because, as we know, the cost and availability of health care is the biggest drag in our economy on productivity, and the costs are just escalating. And I want to ask each of you, in the time we have, to maybe highlight a strategic partnership that you're proud of, that you think kind of captures these things we're talking about. And Daniel, I might ask you first, because you were sharing yesterday, you're doing amazing things that relate to IT, healthcare, materials with our military and with Fort Campbell. That is perhaps one that you might want to share, but there may be another one. And then I'll ask you, Dondi, and we'll just go through on that. And then I have a final question on the culture and leadership here in Tennessee that's unique.
Yeah, so we talked yesterday about our great partnership with Nissan, you know, which is really wonderful, and is deepening on a whole variety of different levels. With Fort Campbell is a unique partnership that we have. We both work with the Special Forces and the 101st Airborne. And basically what we have done is we've brought a kind of design thinking innovation approach in our partner at Fort Campbell that's very much driven by the needs on the ground. And I was there just on Wednesday. We started with 3 projects a couple of years ago. Now we're up to, I think, 20. We had like 15 faculty members there. It's a wonderful relationship, and our faculty is excited about it. Our students are participating in that. We already have like the first 2 startups spun out from that. It's used by the military, so couldn't be happier with that partnership.
So I'll take the one that probably Randy was going to talk about, which is University of Tennessee Oak Ridge Innovation Institute. I'm giving you lead time to think of another one then. This was Randy's invention before I even took the job here. And the truth is we have historically had hundreds of wonderful partnerships with Oak Ridge National Lab between our faculty. So I think right now there are probably 200 faculty, individual faculty, working with individual folks at the lab. What we haven't had is sort of the 2 big organizations linked up in a strategic way. So Randy had this idea about this Innovation Institute, which brings in, largely relies on UT Knoxville, but it also has our colleagues from the Med Center, from Chattanooga, and it's an opportunity to be more strategic about what we work together on. So, for example, we've got a new. Is David still here? He was here yesterday. Okay. Hi, David. I'm not gonna go too deep because I'll blow it, but we've got 2 major research initiatives that UTORI is now funding this year. The partnership part of it that works so well specifically for our campus is those 2 initiatives are now lined up with 2 of the gateways that Deb was talking about yesterday, the research gateways that line up to the way we hire faculty at the university. So it's all getting so much more aligned and so much more strategic, and that I'm really excited about that. I think the future is huge for that. So I stole that one, Randy.
No, she literally did. But conveniently, turns out we have a lot of partnerships across the UT, and I was worried if I picked one, I would defend all the others that I didn't pick. So another good example, again, there's probably 100, but another great example of collaboration across our ecosystem would be with TVA and Oak Ridge National Labs to support a program called TechStars. So TechStars is a national program that brings entrepreneurs, new innovative companies, technical companies to an area and provide the wraparound support in the hopes that they'll be successful and stay in your region. Each of us put in $3 million over a 3-year period to bring 10 companies in. We're in year 3. I'll confess that we were successful in helping the companies be successful. We weren't as successful in helping making sure the companies stayed in East Tennessee. But the most important thing about the initiative, and we said this at the very start, it wasn't really about the work output of the number of companies that we would get, but just the fact that we're working together. TVA, Oak Ridge National Labs, and the University of Tennessee, I don't think have ever had as close a partnership as we do today, and we want to continue to build on that.
Stuart, you want to comment on one from your perspective in economic development?
Sure. So, I've got 2 ways to answer. One, partnerships that we have with our local leaders, 95 counties across the state, I think is very critical to the work that we do. I sit in the tower downtown by the Capitol, and I can't do the work in that tower. I have to be on the ground and boots on the ground with our communities. The feedback that we get is tremendous, and it helps us really craft ideas, strategies, thoughts in partnership with those local communities, whether it's the local elected officials, the chambers of commerces that work there. But I think the great partnership that we have is something that I inherited with this job. It started, I think, under Senator Haggerty when he was commissioner. But we have a partnership with Launch Tennessee. And that's such a critical partnership for us because I don't know if Lindsay's here or not, but great. So, she's here. Hey, Lindsay. So Launch Tennessee is really important for our work because they're working with the entrepreneurial community, with the entrepreneur centers. We were thankful to get some funding with SBIR funding. You all know how critical that is. Getting that match, the federal match, there's way more demand that Lindsay gets for that program. The money that we get is nearly not enough every time. So we're trying to, we're being thoughtful about how we grow the presence of launch and what they do for entrepreneurs and innovators. That's such a critical component. Thankfully, it's sort of set separate from us. The state funding that comes through us just as a pass through, but Lindsay leads that team, and it's so important. A lot of states are looking at how we do that and how it works. And I think as we talk about all of these things, that having that ability to as sort of a wraparound in partnership is going to be really critical to the success of all the things that we've been discussing, not only today, but for the last couple days.
So looking into the future and where the state's going to be in the region, one of the themes and realities that came out over the last 2 days is that you have a culture of optimism here. You are the volunteer state, but through all the discussions, there was a spirit of we're going to do things, we're moving into the future, we're excited, and we didn't hear the doom and gloom that unfortunately is apparent in other parts of our country and the world with everything that's going on. What value do you place on this culture here of optimism and hope? And do you see that as something that is going to be a great asset as you move into the next 10, 20 years? Maybe we'll start with
Yeah,
you,
I mean,
Stuart.
I say this
And bipartisanism.
Yes, this is what I'm about to say is completely non-political, but I have the pleasure to do announcements and cut ribbons and stick shovels in the dirt and all that. And I have we recruit these companies and we go through this whole process. We have all of our incentives. We check all the things that we do. Ultimately, the question I always like to ask is, why did you choose Tennessee? What ultimately was the deciding factor? And every time it's the people. They'll tell you it's the people in the state that made us feel welcome, and it's the communities that come together, and they represent across all different constituents in terms of whether it's utility providers or higher education, workforce, all of the things. And we have, and I said this earlier, that's what makes Tennessee so unique, is the people that live and work here that want to do all the things to make it a better place. I mean, the fact that you got two brands sitting up here representing collaboration, and we could show many slides like this where there's collaboration. Everybody wants to work together. There's exceptions. There are exceptions to that, but generally speaking, everybody really wants to work together and for the better interest of the state of Tennessee, and that is very unique. We can't mess that up.
I'll just build on that and just simply say that you mentioned the hope and the optimism, but maybe one of our best strengths is the sense of collaboration and how we work together. Back when I was commissioner of ECD, we used to call it Team Tennessee. I know my university now also has a Team Tennessee around the mobility area, but we used to have T-shirts. We'd have a chant. I'd go say team. Everybody in the audience would say Tennessee. But everybody worked together. The thing that was missing back then, that we didn't have our higher education partners at the table as much. So I think it's we've taken it to another level. Daniel, one thought as we think about radical, sustainable, permanent collaboration is one of the things I used to talk about back then. T-shirts are nice, but nothing says commitment like a tattoo. I'm thinking maybe tattoos might be in our future. But I want to leave you with one little last bit of heresy, and then I'll stop. So since I'm on a roll, and the Tennessee state flag, we got a lot of Tennesseans in the room, has 3 stars. The 3 stars stand for the 3 what? Divisions. Grand divisions. Divisions. Think about that, guys. What business would be bragging about their divisions? You'd be talking about your alliance. So here's the other heresy. Let's start a movement to redact our state constitution and take out the word division and replace it with alliance, because that's really who we are.
You are on a roll. Ooh. Love it.
I was ready for everything, but not for a tattoo. Okay, so could not agree more. Sense of collaboration, working together, can-do spirit, optimism. That is really infectious, and I think that's what's going to drive us in the future as well.
Well, one of my top 5 strengths is positivity, so I connect with this. Over the last 3 years, all of our incoming students at Tennessee have taken the Clifton Strengths Finder, and the top 2 strengths. the idea of strength finders is everybody has strengths. People, successful people leverage those strengths, so you've got to know what they are. The top 2 strengths of our students, there's 34 strengths, are restorative, which means they want to build things, they want to fix things, they want to solve problems. And the second one is competition. 3 years in a row, 18,000 students, those are the top 2 strengths. And I think about that a lot because it gives me hope. And I tell the students that all the time. There's a lot of stuff that needs fixing. So we need you to get graduated, take those restorative strengths, and get out there and help us build a new world. So that's kind of how I think about it. It is an optimistic state. It's positive, and there's a lot of reason for hope.
Thank you. Well, we're coming to the end of our first inaugural competitiveness conversation across America here at Vanderbilt in Nashville in the great state of Tennessee. So I want to, on behalf of the Council on Competitiveness, thank all of you who've been with us these 2 days for all your contributions, all the wisdom and insight you've imparted, and thank, of course, this tremendous leadership panel. I mean, having Senator Hagerty with us last night, Governor Lee, having Senator Blackburn with her video opening, it was very inspiring, but I can say from the perspective of the council, we have a lot of work to do because we knew some of the ingredients for innovation here in Tennessee. Now we're going to take away a lot more of the recipe for future success and things that we can carry to the rest of the country as we build out these conversations over the next 2 years. You know, there were a lot of very powerful language concepts. We've talked about radical collaboration. Chad Holliday mentioned the golden threads of energy. I was thinking about that. We've kind of begin to see now how these golden threads of collaboration are weaving a tapestry for innovation. Great now, but it's going to take us into the future. And so speaking of the future, I mentioned yesterday morning we're going to be in Boise, Idaho in early August. You're all welcome to come. We will be at Boise State University in partnership with the Idaho National Energy Laboratory, and the themes are going to be building on actually a lot of the energy discussions here, nuclear energy, the microelectronics, how those are all coming together. And then in September, we will be on the campus of Purdue in partnership with Argonne National Lab and the University of Illinois, looking at chips, qubits, and molecules, bringing together all of those transformations, including the life sciences. And then, as I said, next year we have a full slate of places we'll be from coast to coast and in between. I want to propose something. I hope it's not too radical, but the idea surfaced today. The chairman emeritus of the council had this idea, and I asked both Dondi and Daniel if they liked it. But we'd like to come back here in 3 years and see where you are and what you've been doing, if that would be agreeable.
We'd love that.
And we also really hope that you'll keep this fantastic steering committee together that you formed. I mean, when we think of the work we did building this Tennessee conversation, everybody contributed it, and it's a powerful group of leaders. And so we hope that they will continue to work and build this future. So I thought I'd close with, you know, a little bit of alliteration. We had the 3 Ps that you were talking about, Dondi, but I thought maybe it's the power of place. We heard why place matters so much. Geography, people, history, all of that. But it's really about people, potential, purpose, possibilities, partnerships, and the Tennessee promise going forward. So thank you so much for having us here, for all your hospitality. And I know some of us are going to stay over the weekend and experience this great culture of arts in Tennessee. Fortunately, I don't have any granddaughters that are old enough yet to have bachelorette parties here in Nashville, but maybe someday I'll be back as an old lady for that. But thank you all so much for everything and your great collaboration.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.